Hi, this is Craig, and today I'd like to go over 15 things that believe that beginner programmers should learn while learning a language. Now, the reason why I'm creating this is because I keep seeing online some people make videos about being in tutorial hell. And if you're a beginner coming from a background, let's say you work in a restaurant, or you're a digital marketer, or you're a nurse, or work in construction, there's a lot of things that are external from the language that you're learning that you also need to know, that would make your experience a lot better if you knew. So I believe that you can't be in tutorial hell if you're spending time learning these 15 things to speed up your learning with that language. So let's start. Number one, the terminal. So Unix commands, you're basically going to use this while you're installing different programs, or it's a little bit intimidating at first, but it's very necessary for npm or yarn, or even on the cloud service side. I started to learn the terminal a bit better when I was working on some servers, but before that I was pretty intimidated to open up the terminal app because I didn't know what it did and didn't know if it would mess up my computer. Two, your IDE. So the IDE that you use for programming is something that you may not use before you start coding, whether that's Visual Studio Code or Atom or Android Studio or Xcode. Xcode for me was like the most intimidating thing that I saw on my Mac computer when I had it. I've been a Mac user for years, but after I started to learn Flutter, I tested out to see if I could learn a little bit of Swift, and it actually wasn't so bad. Number three is Git and GitHub. Now, Git is where you want to save captions of the software that you're creating. And GitHub is a repository where you're actually storing your code, so that you're storing some snapshots online so that you can go back to your code, especially if you make any mistakes, or other people can find your code and work on it. Now, another thing with GitHub is the fact that you can go through and find a lot of software, open source software, and just code that other people have made, and go through their code and see how they made it and basically learn from this. This is something that if I wasn't coding, I really wouldn't know about GitHub too much. Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is the Bible of answers when you have problems. I didn't include Google in this list for Google searching because I believe that everybody knows how to search on Google, but using Stack Overflow as a resource for your answers is really critical to improving how you code, and hopefully you can go in the future and actually supply answers to other people. NPM and Yarn. So package managers are places that are repositories for code for your extensions for some of the languages that you're learning. So for example, if I'm learning React and I need packages to extend, let's say, the CSS framework, I would install npm package. Me, for example, I'm using Tailwind, so that's something that I would get from npm or Yarn. But a lot of the packages you sort of need to install via the command line, which is the terminal. So just knowing how to do that is really important while you're learning how to code. And this is definitely not something that I knew how to do before studying coding. Wireframing. So wireframing is something that I believe it's important to create some mock-ups of any of the designs that you're going to create. And, they could be really bare bones. So there's a couple of different softwares that you can use your for your wireframing. I personally like Balsamic, but this is definitely a paid software that I've been buying for a while. There's also Lucid Charts, which is pretty good. So I have used this at work. But you can also keep it simple and just use Google Slides if you want to. Just make some boxes and put your workflow in there. But marking out the things that you want to create in wireframe is very important. UX and UI software. So going from wireframing, the next step is making some designs. So I know that this isn't for everyone, and you don't have to be a great designer, but I believe that it will definitely help you if you can do a little bit of design. So some of the softwares that you can use for making UX and UI designs are Sketch, which is paid software for the desktop. The other is using Figma, which is online and it's free. So you get to use it a bit for free, and for more features you have to pay for it. But those are two of the top UX UI design softwares. And again, this is going from wireframing to making more colorful designs that look like the app or the site that you would like to make. SQL is something that is going to be used in a lot of applications that you make for the database. So understanding SQL commands, writing out SQL commands would help you with basically with your database. The popular SQL databases are MySQL or PostgreSQL, and I think that basically the query language for both of those are pretty similar, and I think that this is something that you need to know to make to be able to code better, because you may want to code something that has a database in the back end. Next is JSON. So JSON is a format for storing the data that you want to fetch within your app, and I believe that this is basically universally important. Also, when you need to make some kind of fake data for your app, I use this site called Macaroo, which let me create fake data for some of my demo apps, and I can just download it to JSON format. Next is REST APIs. So JSON is the format, but REST APIs are the way that you're connecting to that data via your app. And one popular software is Postman, which allows you to test out these REST APIs within your app, or just before you start to even use them for your app. So I think that this is something that I definitely would not have used if I didn't get into coding, and I was definitely introduced to this because of some tutorials that I took. Next is Regex. So Regex is patterns for searching within your data. So maybe instead of having a lot of if statements or very long statements within your code to find something or search or to exclude something. There's a language called Regex, which makes these patterns that are a lot easier for you to write into more simplified code for finding things within your code. And one great resource within LinkedIn Learning, there is one course. Generally, I don't want this to be about recommending courses, but within LinkedIn Learning, I found one course that was really great, teaching me Regex, and it was Regex without a language. So I didn't need to be a Python developer or JavaScript developer. That course in there just thought of it as this is universal, where you could learn Regex and utilize it for any program or language that you are coding in. Next is a CSS framework. Now, a lot of people that might view this video, you might be a mobile developer, or you might be a digital analyst going into machine learning, Python, or even web development. I think that learning a CSS framework is primarily something you need for web development. So two that are popular. One that I like is Tailwind CSS. I've been studying it for maybe the last few months. But there's also SAS, which is very popular, and there's quite a few others that are out there, like Material UI, but this is also something that you need to learn while learning a language. Next is virtual environments. So setting up your virtual environment is also important if you want to mimic what a developer's environment is like, so that you could actually be developing with the exact same environment. This is definitely something that I did not know about before programming, and it's something that's on my computer only while I'm coding. And yeah, so I would say that Oracle's VM VirtualBox is something that I use myself. But yeah, you may want to look around to see what virtual environment might be good for you. But this is definitely something that I would not have known about. But the setup, learning how to set this up is important while you're learning the code. Your cloud environments. So the next two are not, it's not the most essential, but it's good to know as you're developing, especially when you're thinking about deploying whatever you're creating. This doesn't really matter if you're a mobile developer, because you're just it does if you're working on the back end, but if you're just making the app, then you may not need to go into these to the cloud environments yourself. Again, this might not be for everyone. So first is GCP, Google Cloud Platform. This is Google's cloud provider. Next would be AWS, and the last would be Azure by Microsoft. And these are the three dominant cloud providers in the world. So you would be making your backends, or going serverless, like let's say Firebase. But these would be the services that you would need to go in and learn. And while I did a lot of work on Google Cloud Platform, I got way better at terminal commands by going through this and setting up sites and backends. Last is Docker. So Docker is definitely not something that everyone needs to know, but when you're thinking about development and deployment in the future, running your apps within Dockerized containers is something that I believe that the industry is moving towards, and it makes things a lot easier once you learn how to Dockerize your applications. So I'm not actually good at Dockerizing my apps yet, but it is something that is very important for me also, so that I could put them in serverless environments. But yeah, I think that Docker is something that is important for your development workflow. And again, this is just 15 things that I thought that would take way more than a month. So some people say that you should only spend a month studying, but with these 15 different things that I outlined, I think that it definitely could take you way more than a month to learn them all. And yeah, I'd like to know in the comments if anyone has any other opinions. But yeah, this is Craig signing out.